So today's topic is Ernie Ball Music Man John Petrucci signature guitars. Over the years I have had 4 of them and I want to share my thoughts with you. Let's start with the JP6 Quilt BFR. This was the first one out of the bunch. Possibly the unfortunate result of a divorce because it was in pristine condition, just like a new guitar off the factory, and the guy I bought it from was asking for a relatively cheap price. More than one would have thought it was a little too good to be true. But I decided to pull the trigger regardless. And after I did, the guy disappeared from social media. I would be lying if I said that I wasn't concerned if it was some kind of a scam. Not too often you will find a great price for a JP, let alone a BFR. After a whole mess that it took for it to arrive to me, which I don't want to remember right now in detail, but it also involves my Bernie Rico Jr. guitar, I was finally relieved, as it was not only one of the most beautiful examples of a JP I have seen both in pictures and in person, and it was an original one. That and the J-Kill made for a huge NGD or New Guitar Day of epic proportions that doesn't repeat too often for me. Quilted maple has always been one of the top woods to have just because of the looks, but this one I think would have benefited from the technique that Kiesel uses, consisting of applying a thin coat of black paint then sanding it off just to accentuate the figure some more. This one I think it had a full rosewood neck, I don't know for sure, but if that was the case, for some reason Ernie Ball decided to put all over this glossy fucking finish that I don't really like. And that's such a shame, not a deal breaker actually, but it's a shame for me because my first guitar that I had with a full rosewood neck was actually my first ever 8th string, which was a Oakland X Factory Xen 8 or something like that. Being an 8th string, the neck was kind of chunky, but it felt amazing nonetheless. But I cannot complain, it's not my signature guitar, so whatever. Then comes the most stunning guitar out of a bunch, the JP6 Koa Island BFR. In my trips to the States, I have come across several JP Koas, but all of them had a price tag over $3,000, so it was out of reach every single time. But opportunities strike when a friend of mine had this trade going on and he got a Koa JP6 in exchange for his majesty that he didn't quite like. Soon after, this guy was all over my Aristides 060 and he offered a Koa in a trade for that guitar, and well, since I always wanted one of those, it was a no-brainer. So I traded the 060 for the Koa, and at first I was planning to keep it in the collection. After all, it felt like a milestone to be finally able to own one of these one way or another. Can't recall for sure, but I think this one had a mahogany neck and an ebony fingerboard. PSO and the whole package known as a fully loaded JP. After all, it was supposed to be one of the top models that Ernie Ball offers. I think this model would look way more badass if the pickups came in what they call zebra bobbins. The one that Francesco Filigo used to own, but that was the 7th string, and it caught my eye for the first second. This is a hell of a classic guitar that shreds, despite the fact that those demarches are not exactly my favorites, but in the case with any BFR that I own is that everything is so well done. Even the electronics are mounted on a plate of what appears to be brass, and not directly onto the wood, which elevates the craftsmanship a couple notches to what you would see with some really unique builders like Patrick Cushnet. And I didn't want to mess with that, so I left aside my project of swapping those demarches for some set of bare knuckles, so to speak. Now on to the next one. Shortly after I got the Koa, I went through a bit of not so good times. That and a guy was very insistent with trade offer I wasn't really interested in, but he kept upping his offer with what ended up being a hefty chunk of cash. It got to the point where I could use the money to solve some problems that I have going on at the moment. So after much thinking, I gave in and traded for this JP6 BFR in Tobacco Burst, or at least Ernie Ball's version of it. A bit sad because I let the Koa slip out of my hands, but this one did not disappoint at all. Not a bad guitar, actually. Finally, a neck that was natural, although it was birdseye maple instead of rosewood or mahogany. But it felt great, and the PS on this one was the better sounding out of the bunch, followed very closely by the one on the Quilt JP. This one, as far as I know, is part of a special run Ernie Ball offers to their dealers. I don't know about the Tobacco Burst one, but I have seen before the name PDN or Private Dealer Network before in a run of JPs on what they used to call Neptune Blue. And they were okay, but not as eye-catching as other models like the Koa. Despite of all these facts, this JP PDN was perhaps the most comfortable to play. Even more so than the other BFRs because of the slicker natural neck and the way more pronounced arm contour. And finally we arrived to the last one. But even then, that PDN also got traded because another guy offered me a JP7, or rather a JP12, in 7-string version. My very first JP was actually Sterling JP70, and I absolutely loved the neck profile on that guitar. It's a completely different monster, a completely different feeling neck than the 6-stringers for some reason. Same everything with the other guitars, PSO, pickups, scale length, just another extra string. This one had the finish that they call cherry sugar, which is dark sparkly purple, pretty much. Out of the bunch, this is the only one that I didn't make it to the video, but I managed to sneak in a bit of a bit, despite the fact that I was playing something entirely different to this song. Well, that's it. Those are my opinions on the 4 JPs that I had so far. If you enjoyed the video, then stick around. See ya!